My name is Celeste, and I am 36 years old. For 8 years, I thought I had the perfect marriage until I heard my husband James laughing with his mistress while plotting to take my inheritance. What they did not know was that I had discovered their affair months earlier. My grandmother always taught me to document everything, and that advice saved me. While they planned to leave me penniless, I was silently gathering evidence and preparing my counterattack. Before I dive into my story, let me know where you are watching from and do not forget to like and subscribe. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one setting the trap. I met James at a charity gala 10 years ago. He stood across the room in a perfectly tailored suit, champagne glass in hand, exuding confidence with every gesture. When our eyes met, he smiled and made his way over. His opening line was not particularly original, asking if I was enjoying the event, but his warm brown eyes and genuine interest in my responses made him stand out from the usual superficial conversations at these functions. I was 36, established in my career as a marketing executive at the firm my grandfather had founded, Hartwell Marketing Solutions. After several relationships that had fizzled out due to my commitment to my career, I had almost resigned myself to focusing solely on my professional life. James changed that calculation instantly. Our courtship was a whirlwind of romantic dinners, weekend getaways, and deep conversations that often lasted until dawn. James worked as a corporate attorney at Patterson and Wells, a prestigious firm downtown, and his stories of negotiation and strategy fascinated me. He listened intently to my marketing campaigns and offered insightful suggestions. For the first time, I felt I had found someone who was my intellectual equal and who supported my ambitions rather than feeling threatened by them. 6 months after we met, James proposed during a surprise trip to Napa Valley. The ring was stunning, a family heirloom he claimed had belonged to his grandmother. I said yes without hesitation, feeling I had found my partner in every sense of the word. Our wedding was featured in the local society pages, a 300-person affair at the Grand Palmer Hotel. Everyone who was anyone in our circles attended, and the photographs showed two people radiant with happiness and promise. My grandmother Evelyn, my only living family after losing my parents in a car accident when I was in college, beamed with pride as she walked me down the aisle. The early years of our marriage were blissful. We purchased land and built our dream home, a modern 4-bedroom house overlooking the lake. James seemed attentive to every detail, from the kitchen island I had always wanted to the home office with built-in bookshelves. We traveled extensively, collecting art and memories across Europe and Asia. My grandmother Evelyn was a constant presence in our lives. A sharp-witted woman in her 80s, she had run my grandfather's business for 15 years after his death before I took over. She adored James, initially impressed by his charm and apparent devotion to me. Sunday dinners at her elegant Victorian home became our tradition, and James never complained about maintaining this family connection. In those early years, James supported my career wholeheartedly. When I was offered the opportunity to expand our agency into digital marketing requiring long hours and total commitment, he picked up the slack at home and brought dinner to my office on late nights. We functioned as a team, dividing and conquering life's challenges together. Our social circle consisted primarily of other successful couples, fellow attorneys from James's firm, and clients from my agency. We hosted dinner parties that became coveted invitations, known for stimulating conversation and James's skills as a mixologist. From the outside, we were the perfect couple living a charmed life. Around year 5, subtle shifts began in James's behavior. His business trips grew more frequent. 3-day conferences extended to week-long absences. Late nights at the office became the norm rather than the exception. When he was home, he seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone and stepping outside to take calls. I noticed his growing interest in our finances as well. James had always been content to let me handle the money, as my business background made me naturally more adept at investments. Suddenly, he wanted to review every statement and questioned my investment decisions. At the time, I interpreted this as him taking a greater interest in our shared future. If I am being honest with myself, there were red flags I dismissed. A lipstick smudge on his collar he attributed to a paralegal who hugged him in gratitude for help with a case. The faint scent of unfamiliar perfume he explained away as having been in a department store buying me a surprise gift that never materialized. Late-night texts that made him smile in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in months. I ignored these warning signs because I believed in our marriage. I had made vows and intended to honor them, assuming James felt the same commitment. Then my beloved grandmother Evelyn passed away peacefully in her sleep. The loss devastated me. She had been my rock, my confidant, and my biggest supporter. James seemed appropriately sad and helped arrange the funeral, standing stoically beside me as I greeted mourners. 2 months after her death, the reading of her will revealed that she had left everything to me, her only grandchild. It was a substantial inheritance, including property investments, stock portfolios, and the family home with all its heirlooms. Altogether, it more than quadrupled my net worth overnight. James's behavior shifted again after the inheritance. His attentiveness returned. He was suddenly present at home more often, suggesting date nights and weekend trips, like during our courtship. He took a renewed interest in our future plans, including frequent suggestions about consolidating our finances and making joint investment decisions. "We should combine everything into joint accounts," he suggested one evening over dinner. "It would be easier to manage and show our commitment to our shared future." At the time, it seemed like a reasonable suggestion from my husband of several years. I agreed to consider it, but something about his newfound interest in my inheritance made me hesitate. It was a subtle feeling I could not quite name, a whisper of doubt in the back of my mind. That hesitation saved me from financial ruin, though I did not recognize it then. Looking back, I can identify the exact moment my perfect marriage began to unravel, when inconsistencies in James's stories accumulated enough that even my willing blindness could no longer ignore them. The first real crack in my trust appeared on an ordinary Tuesday. I received a call from an unknown number while working in my home office. When I answered, I heard a woman's sharp intake of breath before the line went dead. When James returned home, and I mentioned it casually, his reaction was too controlled, his explanation too ready. "Probably just a telemarketer," he said without looking up from his phone. "They hang up sometimes when their automatic dialers connect to a real person." It was plausible, yet something in his deliberately casual tone felt rehearsed. That night I found myself doing something I had never done before, scrolling through our credit card statements online while James showered. What I found sent a cold wave of suspicion through me. There were charges from Castellino's, an exclusive Italian restaurant downtown on evenings James had told me he was working late. A hotel booking at the Westbrook, a luxury hotel in our own city, during dates he claimed to be at a conference in Chicago. A charge for $1,800 at Tiffany & Company. 3 days before Christmas, yet I had received no such gift. I quickly closed the browser when I heard the shower stop, my heart racing. These discrepancies demanded explanation, but some instinct stopped me from confronting James immediately. Instead, I decided to pay closer attention. My grandmother Evelyn had often told me, "Trust but verify Celeste," in business and in life. Her words came back to me as I created a password-protected spreadsheet documenting the inconsistencies in James's stories versus our financial records. Each entry made my stomach tighten with dread. After 2 weeks of quiet investigation, I called Marianne Jackson, my grandmother's best friend and our family attorney for 30 years. Over lunch in a small cafe far from my usual haunts, I confided my suspicions. "I feel paranoid even saying this out loud," I admitted, stirring my untouched soup. "Maybe there are reasonable explanations." Marianne's kind eyes held mine steadily. "Always trust your instincts, Celeste. They're usually trying to protect you. But proceed carefully. If your suspicions are correct, you will need evidence before taking any action." Her advice was to gather information discreetly while maintaining normal behavior. If he is hiding something, tipping your hand too early could make things worse. That evening, I installed a tracking app on our shared iPad that James often used while watching TV. The next morning after he left for work, I checked it with shaking hands. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Messages with someone saved as Mike from work contained exchanges that were unmistakably romantic. heart emojis references to their time together plans for their next meeting. The contact was clearly not Mike, but someone named Amanda. Their conversation revealed an affair that had been ongoing for over a year. Through careful searching on social media, I discovered Amanda Pearson was a junior associate at James's law firm, 15 years his junior. Her Instagram showed a beautiful woman with long blonde hair and the confident smile of someone who was used to getting what she wanted. The revelation devastated me. I spent an entire afternoon locked in our guest bathroom silently sobbing until I had no tears left. The betrayal cut deep, not just the infidelity, but the elaborate deception surrounding it. James had looked me in the eyes day after day while living a double life. Yet when he returned home that evening, I managed to greet him with a normal smile. Some survival instinct told me that showing my hand now would be dangerous. James had raised the subject of my inheritance again that week, pressuring me about consolidating our assets into joint accounts. "It just makes sense financially," he insisted over dinner. "Why have your inheritance sitting in separate accounts when we could be maximizing returns together?" I stalled, claiming I needed time to mentally adjust to managing such significant assets. "My grandmother just died, James. I need to process the grief before making major financial decisions." He backed off reluctantly, but I noticed a tightness around his eyes that I had never seen before. The pressure continued in subtle ways: investment brochures left on my desk, casual mentions of friends who had recently consolidated their finances with spectacular returns. Meanwhile, I continued my investigation, uncovering more evidence of his deception. The truth, however, was far worse than I had imagined. The accidental discovery I made next would shake the foundation of everything I believed about my marriage and my husband. I was supposed to be in Seattle for 3 days attending a marketing conference. My return flight was canceled due to mechanical issues, allowing me to catch an earlier flight home, arriving around 2 in the afternoon instead of late evening. I had not texted James about the change, planning to surprise him. Our house appeared empty when I arrived, my heels clicking on the marble foyer as I wheeled my suitcase inside. Then I heard voices coming from our home office at the end of the hall, one unmistakably James's and the other female, followed by laughter. I set my bag down silently and moved toward the sound, my heart hammering against my ribs. The office door was ajar, just enough for voices to carry clearly. I stood frozen outside, unable to enter and unable to walk away. "She has no idea the company is struggling," James was saying, his tone smug. "Consolidating her inheritance into our joint accounts is the first step. After that, I can move the funds into the offshore account gradually." A woman's voice, presumably Amanda, replied, "How much are we talking about?" "At least $7 million in liquid assets plus properties worth another 3. The old lady was loaded and Celeste is her only heir." Their laughter mingled casual and cruel. "And she trusts you completely?" Amanda asked. "She is pathetically trusting," James replied, his voice taking on a mocking tone I had never heard before. "Always going on about our partnership and shared future. It is embarrassing how naive she is about money for someone who thinks she is such a financial wizard." "When do you think we can make our move?" Amanda's voice was eager, calculating. "I need 3 months maximum. Time to transfer everything to accounts I control, liquidate what we can then file for divorce. In this state, I will get half of everything acquired during the marriage anyway. But with the right timing, I can get almost all of her inheritance too. And then we will be free," Amanda said dreamily. "Just us on that beach in Bali we talked about. Drinking Mai Tais and never looking at another legal brief again," James agreed. Then, in a tone that sent ice through my veins, he added, "Once we get her inheritance, we will be set for life." Does she suspect anything?" Amanda asked, a note of concern in her voice. "She has no idea," James replied confidently. "She is too trusting. She has no idea." I stood there, one hand pressed against my mouth to stifle any sound, the other gripping the wall for support, as nausea swept through me. My legs trembled so violently, I feared they might give way. The physical pain was immediate and overwhelming, a crushing weight on my chest, making it difficult to breathe. I managed to back away, silently retrieve my suitcase, and slip out the front door. In a daze, I got into my car and drove to the one place I knew I would find Sanctuary Marianne's house across town. Her housekeeper let me in, alarmed at my ashen face and vacant eyes. Marianne took one look at me, collapsed in her foyer, and dismissed the staff for the day. In her comfortable living room, the dam broke. I sobbed uncontrollably while she held my hand, waiting patiently for me to find words. When I finally related what I had overheard, Marianne's expression changed from sympathy to steely determination. "This is no longer just about infidelity, Celeste. This is criminal conspiracy. We need to act quickly but strategically." That afternoon in Marianne's study laid the foundation for my counterattack. She called her most trusted private investigator and her top financial advisor to join us. By evening, we had outlined a plan to protect my assets and gather evidence. "Since you know exactly what he is planning, you have the advantage," Marianne explained. "But you must continue to let him believe you are in the dark. Can you do that?" I nodded, finding strength and purpose I did not know I possessed. "I can do whatever necessary to protect myself." The next steps were painful but clear. We decided I would return home and pretend nothing had changed. I would continue to sleep in the same bed as a man who was plotting to destroy me, though I negotiated a temporary reprieve by claiming to have caught a cold at the conference. "I do not want you to get sick," I told James that night, suppressing the revulsion I felt at his touch. "I will sleep in the guest room until it passes," while maintaining the facade of normalcy. I began working with Marianne's team behind the scenes. I met with another divorce attorney, Patricia Wells, known for handling high-profile betrayal cases, while claiming to be at spa appointments. I opened new secure accounts at different banks under my name only. I began the process of cataloging my grandmother's heirlooms and personal possessions, making arrangements to move the most precious items to secure storage. Legal in our state, I installed recording devices in our home office with the help of Marianne's investigator. The recordings quickly provided more evidence of James's scheme and revealed additional shocking information. James had significant gambling debts I had known nothing about. He had been accessing my personal computer, photographing financial documents. Most disturbingly, I discovered this was not his first attempt at such a scheme. His previous girlfriend before me had also been wealthy, and he had managed to extract significant funds from her before disappearing. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Our entire relationship had been a long con with me as the mark. The charming man I married had targeted me for my family connections and potential inheritance. Every moment of our marriage that I had treasured was tainted by this truth. As the evidence mounted, so did my anger, gradually replacing the initial heartbreak. This man had stolen 8 years of my life. He had made a mockery of my love and trust. He had conspired with his mistress to leave me destitute. The depth of betrayal was almost incomprehensible. Yet I maintained my composure, playing the role of unsuspecting wife while secretly working with my team to ensure James and Amanda would never see a penny of my inheritance. The weeks that followed required a strategic precision I had previously applied only to marketing campaigns. My team and I worked methodically, anticipating James's moves and countering them before he could act. My first meeting with Patricia Wells, the divorce attorney Marianne recommended, set the tone for our approach. Her office occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise decorated in shades of gray with splashes of red projecting both elegance and aggression. "In cases like yours, Mrs. Hayes, the advantage goes to whoever acts first and most decisively," Patricia explained, her silver haircut in a sharp bob that matched her demeanor. "Your husband's scheme hinges on your ignorance. That gives us considerable leverage." Under her guidance, we developed a comprehensive strategy to protect my assets and prepare for the inevitable confrontation. The first step was securing my inheritance completely. "We will create an irrevocable trust for the bulk of your assets," Patricia advised. "Once established, neither you nor your husband can access these funds directly. They will be protected regardless of divorce proceedings." While James believed I was considering his investment proposals, I was actually transferring my inheritance into this new trust with my cousin as the trustee. The trust allowed for my living expenses, but protected the principal from any claims James might make. Simultaneously, Marianne's private investigator Ryan was documenting James and Amanda's affair with meticulous detail. Photographs captured their meetings at the Westbrook Hotel, time-stamped to correspond with James's supposed business trips. Financial records showed gifts purchased for Amanda using our joint funds, including the Tiffany bracelet that should have been my Christmas present. The investigation also uncovered James's hidden financial problems. He had 3 secret credit cards, maxed out to their limits, totaling over $70,000 in debt. His online gambling habit had resulted in significant losses, explaining his desperate need for my inheritance. "He is underwater and sinking fast," Ryan explained, showing me the evidence. "That makes him dangerous. People in financial desperation often take extreme measures." This information prompted additional security precautions. I changed all my passwords and installed new security systems at both my home and office. I secured a furnished apartment across town under a corporation name, providing a safe retreat if necessary. The most disturbing discovery came when Ryan's team swept our home for surveillance devices. They found a hidden camera in our bedroom installed by James months earlier. The violation sickened me, but Patricia saw it as additional evidence for our case. "This is illegal surveillance," she noted with grim satisfaction. "It strengthens our position significantly." While gathering evidence against James, I also discovered Amanda was not fully aware of his financial situation. Text messages obtained by our investigator revealed James had told her he was independently wealthy, but temporarily cash poor due to investments. She believed his claim that my inheritance would merely accelerate their plans rather than fund them entirely. "This information could prove useful," Patricia suggested. "Divide and conquer is a valid strategy here. If his mistress discovers his lies, she might become an ally rather than an adversary." Throughout this period, James increased his pressure about financial decisions. He scheduled meetings with his financial advisor, prepared documents for my signature, and repeatedly emphasized the time-sensitive nature of his investment opportunities. I deflected these attempts with carefully crafted excuses, watching his frustration grow with each delay. "My grandmother's attorney is still finalizing some details," I would explain, or, "The trust advisors recommend waiting until next quarter for tax purposes." My financial team created convincing decoy statements, suggesting my inheritance was tied up in long-term investments with significant penalties for early withdrawal. I left these documents where James would find them during his regular snooping, buying more time to complete our preparations. The emotional toll of living with such betrayal was immense. I maintained my composure during the day, playing the role of unsuspecting wife, but often cried silently in the shower, where the water masked my tears. I started seeing a therapist specializing in betrayal trauma, using my lunch hours for appointments James would never discover. Throughout this ordeal, I drew strength from my grandmother's memory. Evelyn had weathered many storms in her life, including my grandfather's health crisis and the recession that nearly bankrupted the family business. She had faced each challenge with dignity and strategic thinking. I was determined to honor her legacy by handling this crisis with the same grace under pressure. The turning point came when James announced he had planned a special dinner to discuss our future. The reservation was at La Maison, the most expensive restaurant in the city. I recognized this as his final push to access my inheritance. "This weekend we need to finalize our investment strategy," he told me, his tone attempting warmth, while his eyes remained calculating. "I have all the paperwork prepared. We just need your signature to secure these opportunities before they disappear." "That sounds perfect," I replied, matching his false enthusiasm. "I have been thinking a lot about our financial future too." The dinner was scheduled for Saturday night. I had 3 days to finalize my counterattack. Patricia and Marianne came to my office for an emergency strategy session, bringing their full teams. "He is making his move," Patricia said. "We need to be ready for every possible scenario." We rehearsed my responses to different approaches James might take. I practiced maintaining calm when presented with manipulative arguments. We prepared for both emotional pleas and potential anger. "Remember, you hold all the cards," Marianne reminded me. "He just does not know it yet." The night before the dinner, I barely slept rehearsing the confrontation in my mind. Years of marriage were about to end in a single evening. Despite the overwhelming evidence of James's betrayal, a small part of me still grieved for what I had believed we shared. As I prepared for the dinner, selecting a black dress that made me feel powerful and applying my makeup like armor, I reminded myself that the man I had loved never actually existed. He had been a mirage, a carefully constructed facade hiding a con artist beneath. This thought steadied my resolve as I prepared to turn the tables on the man who thought he was about to steal everything from me. I arrived at La Maison 15 minutes early, wanting to compose myself in the elegant surroundings before James appeared. The maitre d' led me to our reserved table, a private alcove with a view of the garden illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. I had selected a delicate gold necklace with a hidden recording device provided by Ryan, ensuring everything that transpired would be documented. James arrived exactly on time, looking particularly handsome in his charcoal suit. Had I not known the truth, I would have been captivated all over again by his confident smile and attentive manner. He kissed my cheek and presented me with a small blue box. "A token of appreciation for my brilliant wife," he said, watching expectantly as I opened it. Inside was a pair of sapphire earrings that I recognized immediately from photographs Ryan had shown me. They were identical to a pair James had purchased for Amanda 3 months earlier, except these were cubic zirconia rather than real sapphires. Even in his gesture of supposed affection, he was cutting corners and recycling his deceptions. "They are beautiful," I said, smiling as I put them on. "Thank you." The waiter brought champagne and James proposed a toast. "To our future and new beginnings," he said, his eyes glittering with anticipation that I now recognized as greed rather than affection. Throughout the elaborate meal, James was unusually attentive, asking about my day and reminiscing about our early relationship. I played along, responding with the appropriate nostalgia, while noting how carefully he was building toward his true purpose. After the main course, as we waited for dessert, he reached across the table to take my hand. "Celeste, we have been talking about consolidating our finances for weeks now. I have brought the documents for the accounts I have researched. These investment opportunities could really accelerate our long-term plans." He produced a leather portfolio containing several sets of papers already marked with post-it notes indicating where I should sign. The documents would authorize the transfer of my inheritance assets to joint accounts that I knew from my investigation James had already arranged to drain into offshore holdings. I examined the papers carefully, asking questions that projected naivete while demonstrating just enough financial acumen to be believable. James answered with rehearsed explanations, his patience occasionally slipping when I asked for clarification on technical details. "The bottom line is that these investments will secure our future," he concluded, sliding an expensive pen toward me. "We just need your signature to move forward." I took the pen, watching relief wash over his features. Then I set it down deliberately. "Before I sign anything, James, I have a question for you," I said calmly. "Who is Amanda?" The color drained from his face so quickly I feared he might faint. He recovered quickly, his expression shifting to confused innocence. "Amanda? I do not know who you are talking about." I maintained steady eye contact as I removed my phone from my purse and pressed play on the recording I had queued up. James's voice filled our private alcove. "She has no idea the company is struggling. Consolidating her inheritance into our joint accounts is the first step. After that, I can move the funds into the offshore account gradually." Then Amanda's voice. "How much are we talking about?" I stopped the recording, watching James's desperate attempt to formulate a response. "Celeste, I can explain. That is not what it sounds like." "Then what is it, James? Because it sounds like you and your mistress planning to steal my inheritance." His attempt at denial collapsed quickly under the weight of evidence. I produced a folder containing printed photographs of him and Amanda entering the Westbrook Hotel. Time-stamped statements showing purchases made for her and transcripts of their text exchanges discussing their future together. James's demeanor changed abruptly, shifting from denial to anger. "You had me investigated. You spied on me. What kind of wife does that? The kind who discovers her husband is having an affair and plotting to steal her inheritance," I replied, maintaining my composure despite my racing heart. "I know everything, James. The gambling debts, the previous woman you conned, the camera you installed in our bedroom. I know you never loved me. I was just a mark for your long con." He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. "This conversation is over. We will discuss this at home." "No, we will not," I said firmly. "There is nothing left to discuss. I have already moved my inheritance into an irrevocable trust. You cannot touch it. Ever." As he processed this information, I continued, "I have also sent evidence of your affair with Amanda to the managing partner at your firm this morning. Apparently, relationships between partners and associates violate firm policy, especially when the partner is married." The panic in his eyes confirmed he understood the professional implications. At a prestigious firm like Patterson and Wells, such a scandal would be devastating to his career. In a desperate attempt to regain control, James's tone softened. "Celeste, I made a terrible mistake. I got caught up in something destructive, but I do love you. We can work through this with counseling. I will break it off with Amanda immediately." "That would be difficult," I replied, "considering she already received an anonymous package containing proof of your gambling debts and the fact that you have been lying to her about your finances. She now knows you are not the wealthy catch you pretended to be." As if on cue, James's phone rang. He glanced at it, seeing Amanda's name on the screen. "You should answer that," I suggested. "She probably has questions about why you promised her money you do not have." James ignored the call, his desperation mounting. "What do you want from me?" "Money. I can give you whatever I have if you will keep this quiet." I reached into my purse and removed the final item, a manila envelope containing divorce papers Patricia had prepared. "I want you out of my life," I said, sliding the envelope across the table. "These papers offer you a settlement that will cover your gambling debts and provide enough for a fresh start elsewhere. The alternative is that I press charges for illegal surveillance, attempted fraud, and take all evidence to the police and the Bar Association. Your choice." James opened the envelope with shaking hands, his face contorting as he read the terms. The settlement was far less than he would have received in a normal divorce, but the alternative was professional ruin and possible criminal charges. "You have until Monday to decide," I said, gathering my belongings. "If you choose the settlement, you will move out immediately and never contact me again. If you fight this, I will use every resource at my disposal to ensure you regret it." I stood to leave, but paused for one final statement. My grandmother warned me that sometimes the people closest to us have the power to hurt us the most. I should have paid closer attention to her wisdom. Goodbye, James. As I walked out of La Maison, my legs were steady, my head high. 8 years of my life had been built on lies, but I refused to let them define my future. James's betrayal had nearly broken me, but in facing it, I had discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. The weeks following that confrontation at La Maison were a blur of legal meetings, emotional processing, and rebuilding. James accepted the settlement offer, likely realizing it was his least destructive option. He moved out the following weekend while I stayed at my new apartment, unwilling to watch him pack his belongings from our shared home. Marianne supervised the process, ensuring he took only what the agreement allowed. When she called to confirm he had left, I returned to a house that felt simultaneously empty and liberated. I walked through each room, mentally reclaiming the space that had been tainted by his presence. The divorce proceeded quickly with the overwhelming evidence we had compiled. James made no contest signing the papers that ended our 8-year marriage with the same pen he had offered me to sign away my inheritance. The irony was not lost on me. I learned through Marianne that he had indeed been fired from his law firm. The managing partner, a woman in her 60s with a zero-tolerance policy for ethical violations, had called him in immediately after receiving our evidence. His professional reputation was in tatters, with rumors of his behavior circulating throughout the legal community. Amanda had indeed broken things off after discovering his financial deception. According to Ryan, who maintained surveillance until the divorce was finalized, she had confronted James at the Westbrook, causing a scene in the hotel lobby that was witnessed by several of his colleagues. Her parting words, overheard by the hotel staff, were particularly satisfying. "You are worse than a cheater. You are a fraud." The emotional aftermath was more complicated than the legal proceedings. Despite knowing the truth, I still experienced grief for the relationship I had believed in. My therapist explained this as mourning not for the actual relationship, which had been a deception, but for the future I had envisioned and the years I had invested. "You need to give yourself permission to feel all of it," Dr. Matthews advised during our sessions. The anger, the grief, the betrayal, and eventually the freedom. Those first nights alone in my house were the hardest. I would wake at 3 a.m., momentarily confused by the empty space beside me, then remember everything in a crushing wave. I cried myself back to sleep more than once, angry at myself for missing a man who had never actually existed. Gradually, I began reclaiming my life and identity. I sold the house, unable to feel comfortable in spaces where such betrayal had occurred. The real estate market was strong, and the sale provided additional funds that I donated to a foundation supporting victims of financial abuse. I purchased a modern condo overlooking the river, decorating it entirely to my own taste without compromising for anyone else's preferences. For the first time in my adult life, every decision from the color of the walls to the arrangement of furniture was solely mine. At Hartwell Marketing, I restructured my role to be more hands-on, with clients finding purpose in helping other businesses thrive. The work grounded me, providing continuity when everything else had changed. My team rallied around me with subtle support, never mentioning the divorce directly, but accommodating my occasional need for space. 4 months after the confrontation, I established the Evelyn Hartwell Foundation for Financial Literacy, named in honor of my grandmother. The foundation offered workshops specifically designed for women on protecting their assets, recognizing financial red flags in relationships, and building independent financial security. I reconnected with friends James had gradually isolated me from, discovering that several had harbored concerns about him, but had not known how to express them. These renewed friendships became a crucial part of my healing process, providing connection when I felt most alone. "I never trusted him," my college friend Diane admitted over lunch. "He was too perfect, too rehearsed. But you seemed happy, and I did not want to be that friend who criticizes your husband." "I wish you had said something," I replied without bitterness, "but I probably would not have listened." 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I discovered a letter among my grandmother's personal papers that I had not previously noticed. Dated 20 years earlier, it was addressed to me with instructions to be delivered upon her death. Somehow it had been mixed with other documents and overlooked. The letter revealed that my grandfather had not died of a heart attack, as I had always believed. He had abandoned my grandmother for another woman attempting to take a significant portion of their assets. Evelyn had fought back, legally rebuilding their business and raising my mother alone. "I tell you this not to burden you with old hurts," she wrote, "but to share the lesson that saved me. Trust must be coupled with wisdom. Love should never mean surrendering your independence. And if betrayal comes, remember that it reflects the betrayer's character, not your worth." The letter explained her subtle attempts to prepare me for financial independence, her insistence that I understand every aspect of our family business, and her occasional cryptic warnings about protecting myself. She had tried to arm me without frightening me, hoping her experience would not become mine. As spring turned to summer, I began cautiously considering the possibility of dating again. My therapist encouraged this step when I felt ready, emphasizing that James's betrayal did not mean all relationships were doomed. Through a charity auction for my foundation, I met Michael Brennan, a literature professor at the local university, who had lost his wife to cancer 2 years earlier. Our conversation that evening about resilience and rebuilding resonated deeply, and he asked if I would join him for coffee the following week. Our relationship developed slowly with clear communication and healthy boundaries from the start. Michael respected my independence and shared his own journey through grief without expecting me to fix his pain. When I finally told him the full story of James's betrayal, his response was simple but profound. "He never deserved you," Michael said, "and I will spend however long you will let me demonstrating what respect actually looks like in a relationship." A year after discovering James's betrayal, I held the opening reception for an exhibition at my gallery, featuring artists exploring themes of resilience and transformation. The centerpiece was a collaborative installation representing the journey from betrayal to reclaimed strength. Allison attended the opening, her first time visiting since reconnecting through occasional texts. She came alone, having declined to relay my invitation to our parents. We were rebuilding our relationship slowly, both acknowledging the damage done, but willing to try for something new. James and Amanda were conspicuously absent from my life and thoughts. I had heard through mutual connections that he had taken a position at a much smaller firm in another state, his career prospects permanently diminished. Amanda had apparently moved on to another partner at the firm, repeating the pattern with someone new. I received an unexpected card from James's mother, with whom I had always had a strained relationship. Her message was brief but meaningful. "I raised him better than this. I am sorry for the pain he caused you." It was the only acknowledgement from his family that I ever received, and in some ways the only closure I needed. The most profound change was internal. The woman who had been devastated in Marianne's living room a year earlier had been replaced by someone stronger, more discerning, and unapologetically independent. I had survived the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged not just intact, but thriving. My foundation expanded to offer one-on-one mentoring for women rebuilding their lives after financial abuse. Each story I heard reinforced that my experience, while painful, was not unique. The gratitude of these women as they reclaimed their power became my most meaningful reward. One evening, reviewing applications for the Foundation's scholarship program, I came across an essay that particularly moved me. The applicant described discovering her fiancé had been systematically draining her savings to fund a gambling addiction, and her journey to rebuild her finances and self-trust. Her closing line captured perfectly what I had come to believe. "The betrayal nearly destroyed me, but in rebuilding, I discovered a resilience I never knew I possessed. Sometimes the most painful experiences lead to the most authentic life." I approved her scholarship, immediately recognizing a kindred spirit in her words. The truth of her statement resonated deeply. James had intended to break me financially and emotionally. Instead, his betrayal had ultimately led me to a more authentic and empowered life than I had ever known before. In the end, the most valuable inheritance my grandmother left me was not her financial assets, but her wisdom and resilience. She had faced betrayal and emerged stronger. She had built a legacy of independence that sustained me when I needed it most. And through her example, I learned that our worth is never determined by those who fail to value us, but by our own capacity to rise from the ashes of betrayal. Have you ever had to trust your instincts when something felt wrong in a relationship? I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they are stronger than they know. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to empowerment. Remember, sometimes the quietest warning voice in your mind is the one you most need to hear. See you in the next video.